So yeah, welcome to the rlang book club. This is a club to read the rlang package documentation. And I did put together slides for this one. I haven't done that for the last, I didn't do that for the other package doc club, but this one's got a lot. And I think it would be good for us to try to create some slides as we go. So those are available, or these are available at r4ds.io/rlang. And I'll talk quite a bit more about them as we go through. Welcome, Jim. Good to see you. I do want to note that we follow the R4DS Online Learning Community Code of Conduct. You know, you can click through and see details about that. But the basics are just, you know, don't be a jerk, respect other people. And if you have any problem with anyone doing anything, you know, treating you off, just let me know through the Slack. There's also, I think, an email. There should be an email in here. Yeah. So, all right. Let's see. All right. So the pace on this, now we will be meeting every week. I don't think we overlap with any actual holidays. If we're still going, I might be out for July 7th, but I think we should probably still meet. We'll talk about that. If everyone's going to be out, then we'll skip. But the general idea is, like, really try to meet no matter what, even if the person who signed up to present can't be there at the last minute. Keeping the momentum helps us actually finish the book, or the website, I guess, in this case. But yeah, let me know if there's anything that is that I didn't notice that, you know, you think that we should respect and skip. And I put, I should have linked to it here, but there are a couple of different places where I do link to the schedule. It's also linked in the channel. I put a rough schedule together that is fairly ambitious, but I looked at kind of like how much of a web page does it take up. And it's roughly the same amount of text as a chapter from like Advanced R. And so in theory, we've traditionally done a chapter per week in most clubs, maybe 2 weeks in a chapter. And so I want to try to do the schedule I laid out. But that said, if you sign up for a week and you are putting slides together and you're like, wow, this is just way too much, you know, feel free to stop. Also, if we put slides together and then we don't get through them all, of course, we'll go, you know, we'll continue them the next week. All right. So the format of these meetings, you should volunteer to lead a discussion. Like I said, there's this spreadsheet. I am signed up for the first week here, and then there are these other weeks. I'm going to go through kind of what I mean by them today. So yeah, just sign up here in the presenter column, and it's really more like discussion leader, especially for these package doc clubs. It tends to be a lot more discussion. You can mostly ignore the columns over here. It's just to kind of keep track of how many different people have signed up and how often they have signed up. Like I said, I highly recommend trying to find a week that you can present. You will learn the material much better that way. And if there's something in particular in rlang that you're looking to learn more about, sign up for that week. Something that, like, sometimes people are hesitant. They're like, oh, I don't know anything about that. I don't want to sign up for it. But that's the point. Like, I don't know about a lot of these subjects, but I will present them if no one else does. In order to lead it, like, ideally, it would be nice if you can update these shared slides, because then at the end of the club, we have this nice slide deck that we can, use if we're trying to describe something to a colleague, or the next cohort can use it. And so that's the ideal way to do it. But also, whatever works for you, whatever makes sense. Maybe we'll start doing this and we'll find that slides are not helpful. But I do want to point out that, like, a lot of times people try to do live coding, and it's almost always easier to follow embedded code than live coding, because live coding, you can screw up. Your RStudio font is probably tiny. Like people watching on the YouTube videos aren't going to see anything that's on your screen. And so I really recommend, if you can, work out what you would have live coded and put it onto a slide. As I've mentioned a couple of times, the presentations are recorded and they'll be available on the R4DS Online Learning Community YouTube channel, usually the day after the meeting or maybe 2 days later. That schedule is getting closer to being more exact, because I've got some automated processes that are in place / being worked out. But there's always a human step of like scanning the video and making sure nothing's crazy, making sure that it actually happened, and cutting off like stuff at the beginning and end of the video where there's no actual discussion of the material. Yeah, so if you do sign up and you like read the instructions on how to do the slides and you're confused, feel free to ping me about that. I can help you through that. I have helped several people get set up, and one of the reasons we do it is then you learn how to use GitHub, and you get used to using GitHub to work together with other people. It also, like I said, creates a thing that we can then use. Right. So before I move on to like quote unquote chapter 1, does anyone have any questions, comments, thoughts about this? I'll wait a second to see if anyone's mute goes off. All right, moving on. So the first chapter I put together, you'll see when I do these, I pull out learning objectives. That's because I used to work in education, and laying out what we're going to talk about before we actually talk about it is just a really good way to help people kind of follow along. It's also good just for myself that I try to pull out, okay, what are we trying to understand through this week, this quote unquote chapter. And it's just, I don't know, it's a nice bullet format to have at the beginning of the slides. So this week, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get to know one another. We want to help everyone determine whether this club is right for you. Is this something that you're going to find interesting? We're going to go into a little bit about like why rlang exists. What is it? It's a weird package. It's a package for people to write packages with. And so going into what that's all about. And then I'm going to go through, or kind of as part of that, I'm going to go through the sections of the rlang documentation. That's really most of what I'm going to do. I do not plan to go through any of the like articles or reference on the site. I'm going through like the idea of everything that's there. And then hopefully we can kind of get the lay of the land and see where we're going to go. All right, so turn on your camera or raise your hand if you are willing to introduce yourself, and then I will call people out as we go. I'll start with myself. I am Jon Harmon. I manage the R4DS online learning community. I'm in Austin, Texas, which is the America Chicago time zone, also known currently as Central Daylight Time. I have been in many previous R4DS clubs. Advanced R was the first of the reboot of the clubs, and I did that with actually Tan and several other people. That club, like if you haven't read that, you're probably okay, but there will be things that are covered in that book that will make a lot more sense if you have read that. So you might want to reference the videos. There are many videos for R4DS or for Advanced R, because we've had many cohorts. And I'm here because like every time I look at the rlang documentation, I find something that is better than a way that I have hacked something together. Like, oh, hey, yeah, that's a great way to do that. And so this is actually the package that led to the idea of us reading the entire documentation of a package, because like there's so much useful stuff in here. So yeah, that's why I'm here. Does anyone else want to say hi? looks like I know a couple of you are in a car. So, all right, Arthur.
Hi, I'm Arthur Shaw, and I am in the greater Washington, D.C. area, so Eastern Daylight Savings Time, or Eastern Standard Time, EST, for Americans. Any previous clubs? Yeah, I've been in several previous R4DS clubs, and several currently, actually. And why am I here? Many of the same reasons as John. I've been using rlang for a little while as I started to develop some packages and found it a convenient way to kind of bring tidyverse functions into my functions. And I've been frustrated with it in the past. Every time I look back at, or every time I look at the documentation, I find that rlang has changed generally for the better. And so I'd like to kind of take this as an opportunity to really get acclimated with rlang as it exists now. And I'm sure in a few months it'll be entirely different, but at least I'll have some better knowledge of it. Thanks.
All right, thanks. It looks like Tan came off mute, so
yeah, hey folks.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Tan. I'm a machine learning engineer at Zealous, which is a sports analytics company. I've been around R4DS for, I think this is going on like 4 years or something. Been a mentor for a little while. I'm looking forward to taking in the book club, or this documentation club. I use rlang a good amount, but I'd like to know it better. So we'll see how much it helps, and see. Hopefully, we learn a lot from it. I'm based in Ottawa, Canada. I'll be on East Coast time. That's EDT for the purpose of the book club. Looking forward to catching up with y'all, and yeah.
All right. Jim, go ahead. Can't hear you, Jim. I think you might have a mic issue. All right. While Jim is figuring that out, does anyone else want to say hi? All right, Rebecca.
Hi. Woo. All right, that video. Oh, there we go. So yeah, my name is Rebecca Butler. I'm on the Pacific Coast outside of LA. And I have been in a couple of book clubs, just started recently. This is definitely going to be a stretch one for me. But I am a biostat by day and and the local R champion trying to migrate people from SAS. So I have a tiny little baby package for our users. So I'm trying to really level up my game ASAP. So I think it'll be good, but it's definitely a big stretch for me for looking at this documentation. But happy to be here and learning from you all, with you all.
Excellent. Let's go ahead and Priyanka.
All right, so hi everyone. Can you see me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I am Priyanka. I am technically based out of Boston, but I'm in IST right now, India time zone. And I have been in some book clubs in the past. I am in a few currently. Some I follow actively, some I'm part of active as an active member, but some I follow passively as in when I see the topics that I'm interested in. I think Rebecca, I follow the previous ones with the test that I think that was you who presented that video in that session. So I was, I look at that video in parts whenever I am able to. So, and other than that, I use, I'm an automation person. So I, I have this tendency of looking at other people's code and my own code and just functionizing it, if that's any word. So, and when I do that, in that process, I come across a lot of, challenges when I have to pass different column names, and depending on whether I'm using it in a group by or in a select statement, it needs to be sent out in separate, and it needs to be handled separately. So that's where I've realized, rlang is, the bang bang and all those things are coming from rlang. So that's why I think I could probably potentially do better at that job that I tend to like. What if I knew this package better? So that's why I'm here.
All right. And Jim, do you want to see if you can talk, or let's see. Still don't hear anything, Jim. But feel free, or please do introduce yourself in the chat, and we can get to know you that way. All right, so what the heck is rlang? I think everyone has looked, that's why you're here, but just to go over the basics of what they say they are. They have kind of 4 pieces that they call out. They have the tidy eval framework, which is the whole, like, probably what most people have worked with as far as rlang programming, if you've worked with any. That is what allows you to, it's basically a whole bunch of stuff so that users don't have to put quotes around column names or $signs or do complicated coding to work with columns within data frames. It's mostly what tidy eval is about. And when you make life easier for your users, as a programmer, that means you're making your own life harder, because someone has to pick that up. And so that's basically what rlang is. They made, I think they made the package largely for that. And like, as Hadley wrote advanced R, I think that's a lot of where rlang came from. He was like, oh, we should be able to do this. And so that's the first piece. There's another whole big section of framework around rlang errors for easier to understand messaging and warnings and just information. They have actually created a whole other package, CLI, that takes over some of that, but it's actually interesting the way that it's integrated in rlang. They have stuff that I didn't know about for like telling your package to use CLI, even if you don't tell it error by error to use CLI. It's kind of interesting. I only saw that because I was putting these notes together. So I'm looking forward to learning more about how they recommend doing that. They also have some tools for argument intake, which is like checking and validating and pre-processing arguments. Something that's really interesting that I want to make sure we find time to look at is in the dev version of use this, they have this new function use standalone, and rlang has a bunch of them that aren't really documented yet. They're self-documented. The idea is it's files that you can just like pull into your package. And that's how they do a lot of the type checking now, is they pull this file in that has type checking functions, and then can customize that for what's actually needed in the package that you're working with without having to import like all of rlang, for example, or without having to import a whole other package. That's going to be interesting to dig through. I haven't really dug into this yet. I just saw that it existed, and am looking forward to figuring out how that works. And actually, this one, I learned about it because I asked on Mastodon, I think, if there is a standard way to like validate arguments to functions yet. Like, I've seen several of them. What have people settled on? And Hadley replied with this like set of policies that they've been implementing. And I was like, wait, what? I'm like reading this, use this documentation cover to cover, and I haven't seen that. And he was like, oh, oops, that's in the dev version of use this. I forgot that we hadn't released that yet. And so that's still not quite out yet. Use this is really due for an update, and I think that's probably coming soon. I'm actually curious if maybe they were waiting for R 4.3 to come out, which happened today, because that knocks 3.5 off of their list of supported R versions, and it makes their life a little bit easier on support. So anyway. And then there's programming interfaces to work with R and R objects. That's a giant grab bag of all kinds of different things to help you do interesting things for like looking at what function called this function, or different things like that, and finding different things within objects and dealing with all kinds of things like that. All right, so the overall doc layout, I'm gonna open up the package on site and then flip back and forth so that I can remember what I wanted to talk about. So the general idea is I want to talk about references versus articles, their article types, and the fact that there is a dev version of the docs. So this is the main website, rlang.r-lib.org. The front page is basically what I just talked about. Like, it goes into details of these different sections or different pieces of rlang that are all together in this package. And then they have reference, which is on any package on site. The reference section is like the help. It's the normal docs for functions. We're going to talk a little bit about the specifics of that in a little bit. And then they have a like special version of a package down site where they actually break the articles up into these 3 categories. Articles are roughly equivalent to vignettes in package documentation, but there can be things in articles that aren't in vignettes. And so they have these sections: tidy evaluation, metaprogramming, and conditions. And each of those sections has an overviews section. Overviews tend to be like, things like, what is data masking? And what are, they have a couple of different programming patterns. So if you're trying to do this, here's how to do it. Guides are more like a real deep dive into how to use this thing. So dealing with ambiguity in data masks and dealing with the double evaluation problem. And then notes tend to be like weird use cases. These tend to be really short. So, that's, or relatively short at least, and just like specific things that you might want to watch out for. Yeah, so that's the basics of the help. So the other thing that I wanted to call out is if you go to /dev on most package, well, on a lot of package down sites, especially the tidyverse ones, it is the package down site that would be built, or that is built for the current GitHub version, not necessarily the CRAN version. So far, the rlang dev is not significantly, if at all, different from the like production rlang GitHub, or sorry, package on site. That's just something I want to try to watch out for, that as we're going through, if there's something that's coming, I want to make sure that we're not skipping it once it's like cooked enough to show up on the help. So just wanted to make sure everyone was aware that existed. Yeah. Any questions about that general layout? All right, so then I looked at it a little bit. They have these 3 categories: tidy evaluation. That's like the basics of data masking and like embracing. Metaprogramming, which is kind of what tidy evaluation is built on, plus some other things around that. So metaprogramming is like programs for creating programs. So functions that help you create functions, and functions that help you deal with weird cases. So yeah, that's that. And that's where the in-quo stuff that you might have heard about, especially if you've read Advanced R, that's where that is. Advanced R 2nd edition came out, and then Hadley was done working on the book and could like stop and think about some things. And I think he had a meeting with Lionel, who's the other main rlang programmer, and they invented the embrace operator like immediately after the book was done. And embrace makes all of the metaprogramming stuff easier. No, not all, but most cases. And so this section will be like how you used to do it / how you, I mean, they don't tell you just historical, but they say the weird cases where embrace doesn't work. So we'll go into that when we go there. And then the third major section of the articles is conditions. That's like a whole other area. They have some guidance on like how to make better error messages in there and how to make them like prettier, how to make them easier to follow. So that's going to be interesting to read. So the next piece that it's a little bit annoying to me, and we'll see how much I try to like bother them with pull requests about this. There's a reference categories. So if we go look at the site again, reference categories, I break it down in the notes here, but there's this tidy evaluation category, and that lines up with the tidy evaluation section of the docs or the articles. But then there's metaprogramming tools within tidy evaluation, and metaprogramming is its own top level, so that doesn't quite match up with the articles. And then there's advanced tools, and that's mostly that's probably more metaprogramming than pure tidy evaluation. So yeah, it's just a thing that the reference and the articles don't perfectly align. There's a function argument section. That's just this whole other, these error checking things, and like dealing with like dots in, dot in arguments, all kinds of stuff like that. There's this error handling section. That's great. That lines up with the with the conditions section. So that's nice. There's a session section. Session is like checking on what's going on with the package and like dealing with the environment, the user's dev environment or working environment. Working with options. It's got things about like paths. So that kind of thing. And then again, like I said, diffused expressions, which is like metaprogramming, so doesn't quite line up. And then objects, which is just a giant grab bag of all kinds of stuff for dealing with different types of objects, environments with the stack, environment bindings, creating functions from programmatically, things with S3 objects. So lots of stuff is caught into that object section. All right, so I've tried in the schedule to mix the references that kind of go with an article into that area of the schedule. As you are going through, I'm going to talk a little bit about, actually, I'll just jump to that I think the way that we're going to want to do this when we're actually going through articles is, read the article. So I pulled up an example of, oops, let's get rid of some extra tabs. Okay, this is the first article. What is data masking and why do I need curly or embrace? And as you're reading this, you can see like there will be a link to diffusing, and like, okay, that's an rlang link. So I'm going to I suggest just kind of control click that as you're reading through. If you see anything else, oh no, that's a dplyr one, we don't need that. But oh, data mask programming patterns, I'm going to want to come back to that. So as you're reading through the article to prepare to present it, kind of open all those articles that are referenced, and then kind of outline learning objective slides, whatever you want to do, like get ready with that. But then go take a look at those references. So the first one is a separate metaprogramming article. Okay, we can save that for when we go through that. So I'll close that tab. But oh, data mask programming patterns. This is kind of a sub. It's actually, sorry, that is also a separate article. So we don't need that. But this is a reference, data and env pronouns. This is a reference that is referenced within the first article. So try to like find a place for this in your presentation, I think. So we'll see how this actually works, but that's my thought. So add slides for those references. It may be in line of existing slides, maybe at the end of the whole presentation, whatever makes sense. But since it kind of goes with that article, the thought is go through it. And part of the idea is these articles, these references have all kinds of interesting details about how this thing works. So it's mentioned in this article, but it probably, they don't really go into details about how they work. It's just like that they exist here. And so this, goes into the details about it. Something that can be useful, and the data pronouns aren't a great example for this, but you can search the Tidyverse GitHub org for examples of code. And so that's here. If you go to GitHub, and if you just go to github.com/tidyverse, when you go to the search, this automatically gets added into it. And then you can search for a function name and you'll find code where they actually used that function name. And so I find this super helpful for trying to understand like why, rlang has a lot of functions that you'll read the documentation and you're like, okay, but what is it, what's a use case for that? That I don't understand why you would actually ever do that. And so I find that helpful. So I recommend doing that if you are preparing for a week. And then the last piece of this is like, if there is something in this article or in one of the articles that you're reading that's kind of necessary to understand it, or if there's something else that's in that same area, then add that to your notes, your slides, and kind of iterate on that until it makes sense. Oh, and then the last piece, which I closed the link, is in the schedule. There is this tab. So this is like the entire package down site. And I've got kind of when I think we'll cover it. But if you, unlikely, but if you pull is week ref into your week, just change this date here. And then after we're actually done, either you or I will come through here and flag, okay, we actually covered this thing. And the idea is at the end, we can come back and see, oh, this, like this week ref stuff, I'm guessing we will never actually cover within the context of anything else, but I want to go through all the docs. And so at the end, we'll come back and, look at that. Does that mostly make sense? Any questions? Go ahead,
Makes
Arthur.
good sense.
Okay, so I'm hoping this works, and I'm hoping that we're able to, like I said, relatively quickly get through. I only have us meeting for 10 weeks on the schedule. But I will say, like, I have a couple of weeks family vacation at the beginning of June every year, and there was some of, I just don't want, I want to be done before that if possible. But if we aren't, that's fine. I can miss a week, or depending how ready I am to kind of take an hour away from everyone, maybe I'll hop on the call anyway. So we'll see. I really don't know how long this will take, as reference or related to that we've got about 20 minutes left on this and I don't have anything else prepared. So we'll see how long things take as we go. And so let's see, I'm going to catch up on the chat. Looks like Jim is in Eugene, Oregon. And yeah, like, yes, that each time he tries to use rlang, he finds that he really doesn't understand the definitions and concepts, not so much the code. And that's yes. Some like that weak reference stuff that I referenced. Where'd it go? Here, let me move this up. That yeah, in references, I think it was in objects. There's weak references. This one, like if you load is a weak reference. What? Okay, that's nothing. That tells me that tells me no information. But okay, new weak reference. Okay, this actually has information. I did read it a little bit because I was like, what the heck is this? It's a programming thing. And whoever is presenting this one, if we end up doing a whole week just on these, I could see that happening because it's a computer science term that I don't know anything about it. Some of them, like, chances are I probably don't need to know that, but I don't know. It'll be nice to have gone through everything so that if it is something that is relevant to us, we can pull it up. So, yes. And Jim also mentioned that he's learning a bit of Lisp, and finds that the ideas are much clearer. Yes, I have not done that, but I know there's, all the Lisp varieties are where a lot of the rlang comes from, and so actually it's where a lot of some ideas, at least in R, come from. Well, yeah, R comes from S, and S, well, R comes from S plus, and S plus came from S, and S was for statistical programming, but it has some concepts in it, or that whole family has some concepts in it that are Lisp related. I've never read a line of Lisp code that I can think of. So don't feel like you have to know that in order to follow these things, but I do know that that family of programming languages is kind of where a lot of the concepts in rlang come from. So yeah. Okay, I have now read a line of Lisp because Jim put some in the chat. And actually I do know that way back when, like I don't remember the name of it, but the really old school chatbot that would just repeat back to you, tell me more about whatever. I don't know, that's an old computer science thing, and that was Lisp, and I've seen that code. So I guess I have seen some Lisp code. But yeah, all right. So that's my thoughts. That's the plan. I highly encourage people, and let's see if it has happened yet. Yeah, please, people other than me sign up, because I don't want to present every week. I mean, I will if necessary, but take a week. There are only 9 left, and hopefully, there we go. There are only 8 left, and that's the best way to learn. So grab a week, and then that'll help you commit to digging in. Oh, and I didn't really explicitly go through this, but the way I have it set up is each week, do both of the overviews or all of the overview articles, which I think it's always 2, or it's so there are 2 in tidy evaluation. Oh, there are 4 in metaprogramming, but they were shorter than the tidy evaluation ones, and there aren't any in conditions. So I have those together. Like I said, roughly that's the size of a that plus a little bit of room for the individual references. It's roughly the size of a chapter in a normal book. If you go to work on presenting these and you find either, oh, that's way too much to do in 1 week, or that's not really that much, feel free to, if you get through your section and all the related references, at the end, we're just going to be doing grab bag of objects and function arguments and session. So if you got kind of room in your week, feel free to prepare some slides about some of the grab bag stuff, if it maybe kind of relates or you just find it interesting. And then again, if it's short, who cares? It doesn't hurt anything. So if you get through your week, that's enough. You don't have to do more. All right, and I'm going to read this before I close this. There's let's see. Okay, so Jim has some stuff that we'll talk about in the channel. I think that fits really well of coming up with some definitions and ideas. You can lay that out. And yes, have you heard the good word about R is our meme for this book club. And yes, all right, looks like that's all stuff that we can discuss in the channel. So I will see everyone over on Slack.
Thank you, Jon.
You are welcome.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.